Welcome everybody to the Starting Point Education Series. Today, we have Pat O'Connor with us. I am Loretta Depka, the Executive Director here, and we're going to have a conversation about parenting. Pat is definitely an expert on that topic. She has been with the Starting Point for more than 30 years and takes care of lots of clients that have those issues. Pat believes that lives can be rebuilt, hope can be regained, and meaningful change can be created within a caring environment. And all those parents out there, there is hope, and there is a good conversation that we're going to have today as we talk through all the questions that we have prepared for Pat. If you have additional questions, feel free to add them to the chat. And if we have time, I'll make sure we get to them. So without further ado, Pat, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's start with, you have something in your bio that talks about active parenting. So maybe that's a great place to start. What does that mean?
Well, let me tell you how I got started with this. Is that I had my youngest son was the problem. I just couldn't handle him, and he was a teenager at that point. So I started looking for parenting, and I also noticed that when I'm working with children, a lot of times if the parents were not parenting in a loving way, that the child was not acting the way he should. So basically, I started looking at different programs, and this one I really liked. It's called Active Parenting. And the reason, of course, is because to be a parent, you have to be active. Also, the thing that I liked about it was that it's a 3-part component, which was there's a video component to the program, and there's also there's discussion, and there's a workbook. So they always have this workbook to come home to after after they're finished with the course. They can always go back and look up and see what they're doing right and what they're not doing right. So basically, that's how I got into it, and it's been a wonderful program. There's another program that they have now. The one that I started with was from ages 2 to 12, and then there's teenagers, and then also the cooperative parenting and divorce, which is for divorced parents to get along for the sake of their children. Which
Interesting.
Well, in many cases.
Wow. So you came to this topic by personal experience, correct? Come on, you raised how many children?
4.
There you go. So where did your challenge in the birth order happen?
The last one.
Okay. Those babies are tough, aren't they?
They were tough, yeah. And yet he's a great kid. He's so loving. He's the most loving father I have ever encountered. Really, he is just great at this point. But he was angry. He was really angry. And, when children are angry, they don't respond well to anything. And it's all in the way you say things to them, how you say it that will bring out a more gentle person, this gentle aspects of the child. So,
cool. So okay, Pat, there's lots of research out there, a lot of advice out there that tells parents, it's all about discipline or don't discipline. So where is that happy medium? What role should discipline play in parenting?
Well, discipline it's not punishment. That's for starters. Discipline means to teach. So if you keep that in mind when your child has a behavior that isn't acceptable in society, then what you want to do is you want to help them through that. And you don't do it by yelling at them, by hitting them. Hitting works for maybe once or twice, but then what it's really teaching the child is that in order to get my way, I have to hit somebody. I have to be nasty to them, and that's not the way it is. but you have to talk to the child. You have to definitely have to discipline the child. Now, let's say you have a little child that is misbehaving. Timeouts are always good. You know, on bottom step, you can sit them down, sit with them, look them right in the eye, and tell them what you need from them. Tell them their behavior is unacceptable and that they have to sit here and think about how they can change that behavior in order to make it acceptable. And believe me, they know what to do. You know, people will say, well, how do they know? And what it is too, the other thing that's really important is when you sit a child on a step or anywhere, if it's a chair or whatever, make sure that they have to know that the reason we do that is because we're separating them from society. You know, we're separating them from people around them and helping them to think about their behavior. So when you do that, if the child is 1, it's 1 minute. If the child is 2, it's 2 minutes. 3 minutes. So, and don't put the child in their bedroom. Their bedroom is their sacred place. You know, you don't want to punish them or as discipline them by putting them in their bedroom. You know, they need to be there, but separated, but not totally separated. You don't want that bedroom to be a place of punishment or discipline.
That sounds like great advice.
And it works. It really does work.
There was one thing you said yesterday when we were talking about this, about getting to the child's height, not speaking down.
Right. Yeah. Like, so if you have the child sitting in a chair or if you have the child sitting on a step, you bend down to get to them, you know, kneel down on the ground so that you're level, your eye level with them. You're threatening as an adult. You're big, you know, to them that you must probably look like a monster. So you have to get down on your knees, look them in the eye. You can even give them, you know, just, you don't have to give them a smile, but you have to give them a look that, you know, this is not appropriate. And so we need to change this behavior. I'm here to help you with it. You know, anything you need, you can talk to me about it. But, you know, society doesn't accept that kind of behavior. And our job as a parent, remember, is to have our children, teach our children how to survive and thrive in the world in which we live. And don't forget that we live in a democratic society. So that means the children, as they get older, have their say. You know, you have to talk to them about things. You have to talk to them and say, you know, how else could you handle that? What would be a better way of handling this situation? You know, and let them talk, let them hear them out and really listen to them. It's really,
and that's probably hard when parents are stressed out and running between job and.
Yeah, absolutely. And really it's frustrating. It's hard, definitely hard. Parenting is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have. And you don't get paid for it. The only thing you get is you get children who are functioning anyway.
There you go.
Outside world, that's your plus.
When you talk about discipline, you know, in this day and age, lots of grandparents, lots of extended family are watching your children. Yeah. Grandparents traditionally get away with murder and don't allow, you know, let the child live and play. What do you believe their role is, whether they're watching or?
Well, of course you have more time. I think the best thing that grandparents can give their grandchildren is time that the parents don't have. I mean, you can actually sit and play with them. You can talk to them. You can read to them anytime because you're not pressured by the pressures that a parent has. So to be a grandparent is like a godsend, really. And it's great for the child because it gives them that time that they need. Children need that time. And they need to, the other thing is they need discipline. So you can't let them get away with things. You do have to work with them. And, you know, if they're doing something that's wrong, you talk to them and you give them the same type of discipline that you would your children. But letting them get away with things is not a good thing. Many times parents let their children get away with things and they cover it up and, and that's not good because a child can't function in the outside world like that. Think about it. They go to school and what's going to happen to them?
Right.
They're going to have to take consequences. The thing you have to remember is that for every behavior, there's a consequence. And if it's good behavior, you get a good consequence. If it's a bad behavior or something that's not acceptable, then the consequence is not going to be good. But children have to learn that. That's something that if they can learn it in their family, they're going to have a head start because once they get to school, they're going to learn it. And, it's going to be harder for them.
So then you mentioned we let our children out into the world, and how do you not become that terrible word that you hear all the time, a helicopter parent?
And it's hard. I have to say that was one of the hardest things that I had to do, is to let my children go in order to let them grow. Because you want to protect them. You want to make sure that they're okay. You want to follow them and make sure that everything is all right. And that's very detrimental. And not allowing them to do anything is also very detrimental. I mean, you have to let them go out and see and face the world. You talk to them. You can talk to them ahead of time. Say, where are you going? Make sure that you know where they're going. Make sure that you know who they're going to be with. And I always thought that when they're in high school, it's really difficult because that's the time when they're really spreading out, getting friends that are not from the neighborhood. You don't know who they are. So I used to always ask them, who are you going to be with? And if they're going to somebody's house, I need the telephone number of the parent. Because a lot of times in high school, they're out there drinking because half the parents aren't home. And that you don't want either. I mean, where my children went to school, the principal had a slogan, which was freedom with responsibility. So you give them their freedom, but they need to have the responsibility to be able to take care of themselves and do what's right, do what's best for them, for everyone, for society, really, when you think about it.
So, when you talk about timeouts, I'm sorry, what's running through my head is, what do you do with a teenager? You can't put them 15 minutes in a timeout, right?
No. And that's a great question because yes, as they get older, what happens is the consequence for the behavior has to match the deed. In other words, whatever they did, for example, if they go out and they're at a party and they're drinking and they come home, well, guess what? They don't go to the party. They don't go to any more parties for a month.
Okay.
You have to, a month, 2 weeks, whatever it is, you have to set that rule. So you take away the thing that they were doing, really. If they don't do homework and they get a bad grade, you have to look at why are they getting this bad grade? What's taking the place of them studying and doing their homework? Is it the computer? Is it, they're online all the time? Are they on the phone all the time? That gets taken away until you see an improvement in the grades. And usually, when they're in school, they get tested every week. They bring home a test that's great. Okay. So a week without whatever was, causing you not to do your homework is enough. You can try again. I see that you've been trying, your grade is up. So I'll give you back your phone or your computer or whatever it is. In this case, you can't take the computer because they're on it to do their work, but you can take your phone. That's one of the things that is really, but don't take the phone for something that it doesn't connect. You have to connect it. You have to connect whatever the problem is and make sure that they understand that there's a connection there. Without that, it's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense to them.
That's really interesting, Pat, because I think about, not that I was a bad kid, but I can remember being grounded and it had nothing to do with what I did wrong. I spent a lot of time grounded.
I can't believe that.
Pat, how do you comfort your child? And I guess this is really all ages, from the broken hearts that they get, bullying from other children, their best friend not talking to them, being talked about on social media, the first breakup. How do you help them?
You need to talk to them and don't talk at them. Talk with them. What happened? And let them tell the story. And as they're telling the story, you need to listen for feelings and then be able to identify those feelings to the child. It sounds like you really feel hurt about that. And the child will say yes, as long as they know that you hear them. When I get teenagers in my office, they say to me, nobody listens to me. And it's true, nobody listens to them because they don't pick out those feelings. So the child thinks that, whatever they're saying is bouncing on them, and then a parent just giving them advice. Well, you do this, you do that. You don't give them advice, you give them problem-solving skills. You say, well, how do you think we can handle this? What would be the best solution to this? Give an example, a little girl got in trouble in school, and her friends were passing a note. And she was sitting in between the two friends. So she takes the note, she hands it to the other friend. She gets caught with it. So what does she do? She comes home, she's all upset because now she has all this extra work that the teacher gave her. So what does she do? She tells her mom what the situation was, and the mom says, wow, I really feel badly. That's really too bad that happened to you. But what can you do? The little girl thinks about it and she says, well, I guess I could tell the teacher what really happened, but then my friends are going to be mad at me. So she's telling her what she could do, but then she's also telling her what the ramifications of that will be. And then she said, well, I could talk to my friends and tell them not to do that to me again. That if they do hand me a note, I'm not going to pass it on. And she said, maybe that would be okay. So the mom doesn't say anything to her. She just lets her go, and she thinks about all these things. The next day, well, the girl goes to school, of course, the next day. Oh, and she keeps saying also that she doesn't want to do the punishment assignment. So the mom says to her, well, what's going to happen if you don't? Well, I guess I'm going to get a bad grade. And the mom says, that's a shame because you've worked so hard to get that grade up. And now if you don't have a good grade, it's a shame that that's going to bring it down. So again, mom just leaves it, doesn't give her advice. The next day, she goes to school, she comes home, and mom says, how did you make out today? She said, really good. She said, I did the assignment, and she said, I handed it in. And she said, but I told my friends that from now on, don't pass me any notes because I'm not going to pass them on.
Amazing.
So it's the ability to be able to let the child think the problem through with your guidance. You can even give them a suggestion. Well, maybe you could do this, but you don't tell them what to do, because when you tell them what to do, they resent that and they fight against that, especially teenagers. That doesn't work with teenagers. They don't want to hear what you have to say anymore. So, but that's I think it's one of the greatest things you can give your children is the ability to think things through.
And think things through with your guidance. That sounds like the perfect case scenario.
Right.
What if the child is the one doing the bullying? How do you address that?
Yes, and bullying is very difficult because, first off, all the schools at this point have a program for bullying, usually, and they do not allow it to happen in school. So basically what's been happening is it's on the computer, it's cyberbullying. And so the thing that you have to do when your child is on the computer all the time, don't allow them to be in their bedroom. They have to be at a place that is visible for everyone. Sit them down at the dining room table or the kitchen table, somewhere where you can walk by and glance over to see what's going on. Because this is where kids get into all trouble. I've had children come in, they've been bullied on the computer. They won't go to school anymore because of it. So this way the parent at least can see what's going on, glance over and read what's up there or see who they're talking to or listen to it, whatever. But yeah, don't allow them to be on that. Plus, it's dangerous. I mean, really, many of the times the young girls come in and they'll say to me, "Oh, I met this great guy. I have this new boyfriend. He's wonderful." I said, "Oh, where did you meet him?" "Oh, on the computer." I said, "You did?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how do you know that's who it was?" You know, you have no idea. They could put a picture of a young person up there, and I said, "It could be some old man after you." And they look at me like, "What?" But how many times has that happened? Where they, predators do that. So they really have to be careful.
And how do you keep them sort of safe? I mean, outside in the world, from, they know stranger danger when they're little. But as you know, we're in a technology world. They're in school right now on the computer.
Right.
How do you,
Like
I mean, you can't even limit their time on the computer anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When it's not school, school's a different story. Now they're on there for school. They have to be there. And then there's usually a session sometimes afterwards in the evening or early evening where they can discuss with their teacher what they were studying or what they went over. But other than that, 1 hour on any games, same thing. I mean, half these kids are hooked on these games. They play them all night, and then they can't get up in the morning to go to school. That a lot of parents say, after 10 o'clock, everything gets shut down. A lot of parents take their children's phones, if they're going to bed, so they don't have the phone in bed with them because they're talking on the phone all night. So, it was actually easier when my kids were younger because there wasn't all this cell phone and everything. You just had to keep them on the phone. And since they didn't have phones in their bedroom, that kind of worked.
And the technology piece, when is it appropriate to give a child a cell phone?
Well, that's the other thing, there's phones out there that are good for younger children. I really think that if if the parents are going through a divorce, that the child should have a cell phone. But there's a cell phone that only calls mom or only calls dad. They can't do anything else with it. And that would be the ideal situation for the child. If the child doesn't feel safe, if something's going on, they can call the other parent, if they're visiting with one parent or the other. But as for the age, maybe 6th, 7th, 8th grade, which is ridiculous because they all have them in 1st grade, I think.
Well, and I think most parents feel it's a safety feature, but I like what you said.
A lot of times the schools will work with that. I know where my grandchildren went to elementary school, they collected all the cell phones and I left them in the office. So they couldn't be using them, in the classroom. But they were there in case the child needed a ride home or something happened, they missed their bus or whatever. So they kind of have to have it as a safety precaution, surely. And it is a great thing for safety, as long as it's not misused.
There's a lot of talk about kids going back to school, depending on your age, how how they've been socialized for the past year or not. What is your advice to the reluctant child to go back to school? They like the computer. They like being home.
They like the fact they don't have to get up and get dressed and run to school.
Right.
Well, listen, when school's open, they have to go back. That's the bottom line. The school will determine that. I think in the beginning of the pandemic, they did have a choice, like some of the schools were open. They were doing the hybrid schooling.
Right.
I think very soon you're going to see that all the schools are opening up. I know especially in New Jersey, because a lot of the schools are newer schools and they can't put in the new filtration systems and the air systems and all that. Philly's a different story. I mean, the schools are so old, it would cost them a fortune. I don't know what they're going to be doing, but it's difficult. But when the school says it's time to go back, they will have to go, like it or not.
Is there any way you can prepare the reluctant student?
Well, they have to go, it's hard. I mean, I have my sister has a grandson who is starting high school this year and has never been into school. And their school system is going back to school. Well, luckily, the father works there, so he was able to take him through and show him the school because they didn't have any orientation. They've had no contact with the other people that they're going to be involved with. So, you have to do the best you can with it.
Let's say the sophomores are really going to be freshmen next year.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
whole dilemma of a
Even
new
like my granddaughter, when she goes to graduate school, she has no idea what the school looks like. She's never been there. She has no idea who she's going to be. Well, she does have an idea, but they just haven't really gotten it all together yet. But somebody did contact her that was willing to be a roommate so that she could at least contact them on the internet and meet them face to face on the internet. But yeah, it's hard for these kids, regardless of what age they are.
In households where there's siblings, are the rules different for different kids? And how do you make sure those rules that the teenager and the 5-year-old in the house get their own parent time?
And that's difficult. No, you do. And well, the teenager is going to kind of be off on their own anyway. You know how kids are, teenagers. So the special time for them would be if you have a little ones go to bed earlier. So if you have the older one, you can spend more time with them then. And family time. I mean, there's family meetings that you can have. If you're planning a vacation, you sit down with everybody and you discuss it. What would you like to do? Where would you like to go? There's all kinds of things that you can do with them together. You can do projects together. If a holiday is coming up, they can make ornaments together. They play games together. Board games, not, although the computer games too, there's some people that do play the computer games with their kids. And that's okay too, as long as they have that connection. They need to know that they're special because they are. And we have to treat them like we really truly love them. I know that everybody loves them, but sometimes the parents don't show that. And that's sad.
And how about all the life lessons that we need to teach our children?
The what?
The life lessons, how do we make sure that, I hate to say it, they know how to go to the bank or do the online banking, I guess, nowadays, but they, know how to save money and they know, we have so much to teach them. How do we make sure we cover it all?
That really starts with giving them an allowance, giving them chores to do, even little ones. Little one will do a chore for you. Gosh, the other day when I had my grandson, he saw me cleaning the like wiping the front of the cabinet, and he asked for the sponge, and I gave it to him, and he's cleaning the cabinet, and then he goes like this, he washes his face with it.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
But you have to teach them, you have to let them go. They'll follow what you do, especially when they're real little. And as they get older, every child should have chores, but the chores have to be delegated to each. It's good if they rotate them. Like if you have a chore chart and you put down like Monday of this week, Monday through Friday, so-and-so is going to clear the dishes from the table. Another child will put the dishes in the dishwasher. One will rinse them, one will put them in the dishwasher. Another one will take the dishes out of the dishwasher, but rotate those chores. Don't make them do the same thing all the time, and make sure that they're divided up evenly because, it's not fair to have one child doing all the chores and the other one's just walking around doing nothing. Now, let's say that the child has a chore chart and he didn't do his chores. Now, at the end of the week, when he does his chores, he gets an allowance, and that's his money. That's where you teach him how to work with, to save some of it, and you can spend some of it. And that's how you teach them that, if you want to open a bank account, we'll open a bank account for you. or you have a bank, you can put it in your bank. And then when you want something, you don't give them everything. You know, you let them save for it, at least pay for half of it. You know, they don't have to pay for the whole thing, but, you know, pay for at least half of it. So that teaches them responsibility, and they know that mommy and daddy aren't going to give me everything the rest of my life, because that's what happens at this point, because there's so many children out there now that just expect it. My son-in-law, he said at work, it's like the kids that are coming in, starting to work, they have no concept of what work is. They want to get paid for doing nothing. You know, that doesn't work. Not the way the world works. So you're doing them an injustice.
I imagine that is, you know, they say that adult children are living longer with their parents than generations before.
Yeah, but a lot of
How does that work?
with the economy too. You
Right.
know, the children went to college, they come out, they can't get jobs. What are you going to do? They have to move in with you. They don't want to be there either, believe me.
So how do you parent? Do you stop
Well,
parenting?
you know what? The way I looked at it, once they were 18, you really have no say. You know, you can say, well, all right, you know, I expect you. And if they respect you, which is, respect is another thing. Respect is taught, not taught. You can't say, well, you need to respect me. And if you're not respectful to them, they're not going to respect you. It has
Wow,
to be taught.
that's pretty simple. I mean, that's a basic concept that everybody can think about.
That's basically what it is. If you see a child who's really disrespectful, it's because he has not been respected in some way.
Interesting.
So, like I said, when they were 18, you know, you really have no control over them. What are you going to do? If they stay out all night, you can't call the police because they're 18.
So that line about you're living in my house, you follow my rules, no
No.
matter how old you are.
You know, that, like I said, if you respect the parents, you're not going to be somebody who's going to do that. And the only thing I used to ask is that, look, if you're going to be out all night, just give me a call and let me know where you are. Or just let me know that you're not going to be home. You know, that's,
Otherwise, you stay up all night waiting for them, right?
yeah, because you're sitting here waiting for them.
And what's your best advice for parents to take care of themselves?
Well, I don't know. I have to think about that. You know, parenting, like I said, it's a tough job, especially it's tough when they're young. It's tough when they're older. When they're young, you don't get enough sleep.
Right.
At least when they get older, you'll get sleep if they call you.
So
you know,
it's a lifelong job is what you're saying, right?
Walking around sleepless, you know, and you're like, okay.
That's great.
Like my son said to me the other day, he said, you know, he said, once I had my baby, he said, it's not about me anymore.
That's interesting.
Yes. And I went, wow, it's not about you anymore. That's right. So that's really a deep insight for a young father, I thought, you know.
It really is.
About him and taking care of him and what he needs. I said, yeah, exactly what it is.
And what about parents who are really hard on themselves and are convinced that everything they're doing is going to send their child as an adult to a therapist because they didn't raise them right?
Well, I think they need to get some help.
They need to see the therapist. Is that what you're telling me?
Therapist, yes. Because you can only do what you can do. And if you know that you're doing the things right and you know, there's still cases where the child's going to go, like my husband always said, he said, the outside world, their friends, their peer group are going to they become more important than you at a certain time in your life. So you're going to expect that there's going to be things that are not going to be that you like. You know, they're going to be doing things you don't like. And you just have to, again, let them grow in order to let them grow. What can you do? They have to learn the hard way. I mean, they know better. You've taught them better, but they have to learn the hard way many times. And that's okay, you know, as long as you prepared them.
Well, Pat, I can't thank you enough. I think this has been very helpful. And we will be placing the audio on our Starting Point Inc. of New Jersey education channel on YouTube. So you will find this, what is our job as a parent on our YouTube channel. So again, Pat, many thanks. Pat is a therapist here at Starting Point, and if you need more help with parenting, please feel free to contact her. Her contact information is on our website. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I hope that I've been helpful to people.
You
Sometimes
really have.
my technique sounds a little, how would you put it? Well, they're not real strict. And I don't think that the strictness is what children need. They need to know that there's rules, and they need to know that the rules are there to help them to succeed, and they're there to keep them safe, really. But if they decide not to, you have to let them go. That's the hard part. That's the hard part.
Well, the love and respect that you just talked about just is, for me, that's the secret, isn't it?
Yeah.
Love, respect, and discipline. But how did you define discipline? I thought that was really interesting.
Discipline is not punishment, but it's teaching. Discipline,
I like that.
teach.
All right. Well, thanks, Pat.
You're welcome.